We're going to stay in the realm of D2 football and talk about the Black College Football Hall of Fame Classic game coming this fall to the D2 realm. And you see the two teams right here, Virginia Union University and Miles College, facing off in the Black College Football Hall of Fame Classic, August of 2025. That'll be in Canton, Ohio at Tom Benson Hall of Fame Stadium. So, what stands out right away about this matchup is these are two really good football teams. And, HBCU football at the Division II level has not been synonymous with a lot of success in recent history. These two teams proved a lot of those people who would think that wrong last year, and I'm really excited to talk about their success and what this matchup could mean in a Week 0 type contest. Now, on the website, it said that this is the first time in the 6-year history of the Labor Day weekend game, the newly dubbed Clash at the Classic will feature the defending football champions from the CIAA and the SIAC, which are the two conferences primarily composed of the historically black colleges and universities, what we know as HBCUs. Now, going into this, I wanted to talk about both these teams and where they both sit after last year's and what makes this a very interesting matchup for the Panthers and the Golden Bears, respectively. And what I will say before this, too, is that there's a lot of other events that revolve around this matchup. The football game, obviously, being kind of the showpiece front and center. But another one that's really exciting is a Battle of the Bands type of moment that they're going to have. Both of these bands have a lot of history and tradition there, so that'll always be a neat deal, especially when it comes to these HBCU conferences. There's a lot of pride in those marching bands, and they're really damn good. Usually is like the easiest, most simple way of saying it. But let's talk about these football teams. Virginia Union first. In 2024, they went 10-4. And that in itself is an incredibly impressive feat. Playing 14 games in college football means you're doing something right, because that means there's postseason play involved. Now, those losses, early on, it came to D1 Hampton, and then it was Johnson C. Smith and Virginia State that got them in the regular season. That Virginia State one is interesting because they lose to Virginia State, I believe the Trojans, that week. A week later, they play them in the CIAA championship. They get their revenge. They get the get back. Just a week later, they take the CIAA championship, and that would move them into the playoffs. Eventually, they would lose in the Elite Eight to who would be the runner-up in Valdosta State. The Blazers knocked them out. But they were one of the last 8 teams standing in D2 football. That is incredibly impressive. They reached the national quarterfinals for the first time in program history. And we'll talk about a lot of firsts for these programs, but that one seems like a very notable one, and you can't talk about that without talking about this quote from the man at the helm there. And this is Virginia Union head coach Alvin Parker after the second-round win over Lenore-Rhine. He said this, quote, "Back in August, I said this was a team that could compete for the national championship, and I think some people laughed at that." And I loved this quote. I thought that was awesome. And this is a guy who keeps receipts, but this is a guy who has been confident in his program, his team, his playmakers for the long run, and obviously knew going into the 2024 season what they had on their hands, especially offensively. This offense was about as high-powered as it gets, especially in the CIAA. You look at that conference. They led the conference in scoring offense. The second closest team was 10 points per game behind the Panthers. That should tell you all you need to know about this offense. They were also top 3 categorically in scoring defense in conference play. But now, the big part about both these teams we'll talk about, what do they lose going into 2025? What kind of key playmakers or pieces, coaches are not joining them as they continue on this campaign? And I don't think you can start the conversation about Virginia Union without talking about Jada Byers. Like, that is just one of the most impactful performers that this program has seen in the history of this program, and I'll talk about why. So Jada Byers, those of you who don't know, phenomenal running back for the Panthers. He's a record holder for most career rushing yards at 5,311 and career touchdowns with 70 for the Panthers, along with numerous single game and season records. The big question for them is, how do you replace that production? Because you can't replace Jada Byers. That is borderline impossible. What you can try and do, sounds like a Moneyball thing here, like make them up in the aggregate, right? You can try and replace that production. Good luck. There's not a lot of backs that run for over 5,000 in their career at the college level, let alone when you're talking about a really good college program that's played against some top-level competition. So Jada Byers is the big hole, the big void that this offense will certainly miss coming into this season. And he recently, I mean, he's racked up a ton of awards this offseason. Got a little bit of video here from the HBCU Combine that I wanted to take a look at here, where he was featured. He played also in the HBCU. I believe they had like an all-star bowl type of event, and he is currently on his journey to go and try and play professionally, whether that is in the NFL or some other league. We will definitely find out. I'll tell you right now, he's got the talent to play professionally. I don't know if that's in the NFL right away or somewhere else. He has the talent and the ball skills and all the attributes you want. You watch him play, you can see it. It's very, very apparent upon watching him play football. But as you notice there, this was held at the Saints practice facility a little over a week ago. He ran 4.84 at the Combine, which, if you follow running backs, that's not great, a 4.84. I did notice, though, that a lot of the other running backs had very similar times, so it could have been just something with some of the timing there, but that's got to be laser, and that's at an NFL facility. I have to imagine they're doing that correctly. I made a note here, though, that the game speed on him seems much faster than a 4.84, right? You have guys that maybe test incredibly well and put the pads on. Maybe it doesn't translate. Certainly not the case here with Jada Byers. He's a guy that certainly the game speed feels faster than a 4.84. I was kind of surprised to see that. So not a great note for him heading into his draft prep, but certainly not at the end of the road. And Jada Byers is not the only big piece this offense is losing heading into 2025. And I was trying to look at their quarterback, and Mark Wright, who has had some really great production for this Virginia Union offense. Looking at the roster, says senior. You check out the socials, seems like he's got a final year that he will be coming back to play. So all signs point, at least from what I can tell on the internet kind of presence here, all signs point to Mark Wright being under center again for the Panthers in 2025. It is sometimes really difficult to track down that kind of information when there's not a central database, so to speak, for the D2 players. But let's assume that Mark Wright is back for that offense. That's a huge plus for this Virginia Union attack. But on the outside, his favorite target is one that they're losing. That's their leading wide receiver, Reginald Vick Jr. He transferred up to Wake Forest. I believe that's a move back home for him. Also, obviously, up a few levels there. In 2024, he finished the year with 12 touchdowns and over 1,100 yards. Both of those were good enough for top 5 across the country in all of Division II football. So, you lose Jada Byers. You lose Reginald Vick Jr., those are two of your big powerhouse production pieces on offense. From what I can tell, the quarterback Mark Wright will be back. When you have a guy in a single collar like that who's experienced, who has won at a very high level, I don't think there's anything more valuable in college athletics than a leader who has done it all, so to speak. And maybe not done it all, because of course they want to finish the national championship, but has experienced a lot of success at this level. So, continuing down the list here, one of their best defenders, Jalen Mayo, he hit the portal recently, 3 interceptions, 52 tackles just a year ago. That's going to be a big hit. It seems that there are 10 more players in the portal as well, some solid playmakers, 6 defensive backs. From what I found in the portal from this Virginia Union defense, 6 DBs gone. So that's odd to me, right? Usually if a top DB or 2 leave, you have a bunch of guys that are excited because you're going to step in and hopefully earn a job, earn a spot. I don't know what exactly the incoming class looks like transfer portal-wise for them. This is just the information I could find. 3 of those being all-conference players out of those 10 additional pieces. So you're talking about losing some big pieces from Virginia Union. Now, the point is, everyone loses people. In this day and age, every single team's going to lose. This number of having like 10 to 14 players in the portal, it's kind of crazy, but that's normal. In college football, that is incredibly normal to have 14 guys jump ship after the year. Now, the crazier part is that there's a really, really, really good chance that all 14 of them, won't be playing college football a year after. There's a really good chance there's going to be a few of those guys that have played their last snap of college football. And if you want to enter the transfer portal, you have to accept the fact you might be done. But anyways, that's the gist on Virginia Union. Really strong program, a lot of program firsts this year, a lot of statistical leaders, especially when it came to the offensive side of the ball. Let's go over and talk about Miles. Miles College, the Golden Bears, 10-3 in 2024. Their losses were to West Alabama. We know that's a damn good football program. D1 Alabama State, and then guess who? Valdosta State in the playoffs. This team is very fascinating because last year they started 0-2. You lose to that pair of Alabama teams, West Alabama, Alabama State. They won 10 straight after that. And some really, really great wins along the way. One of those wins being their first program history win in the playoffs over Carson Newman. And I got a video here. I know we reacted to it a little bit ago on the podcast, kind of when it actually happened. But here is a clip from the final seconds of the first playoff win in Miles College football history. It was obviously a pretty cool scene there. You can see the excitement from these guys. So you want to talk about program first. This is a program that has experienced an unimaginable level of success and an unprecedented level of success, this Golden Bear squad, and they've done it at a very high level. The challenge for them is going to be, can you do it again? The challenge for both these teams is, but let's talk more about these guys. They led the SIAC in scoring defense. They allowed only 18 points per game, and I think that was what's most impressive about this Carson Newman performance. They go against an offense that they maybe were quite unfamiliar with. Carson Newman running that flexbone offense. Ashley Ingram comes from Navy, the new head coach over there for the Eagles, instills that offense. They shut it down. They absolutely shut down the Eagles in this one. They did that to opponents all year long. So for this Miles team, you see it there, just a 1-point victory. But man, that is a momentous win in the history of this football program. And their defense, very much unlike Virginia Union, their defense was the stopping point, quite literally and physically, all year long for this squad. Now, for them, one of the big cliff notes is they got a brand new head coach, Chris Good, hopefully pronouncing that one correctly. Their previous coach, Sam Shade, took the head job at D1 Alabama A&M. So he's out of town, got an upgrade. They bring in Chris Good, coach, and this is his first time being a college head coach, which was an interesting point for me. He was a defensive coordinator for the Birmingham Steel Dogs in the Arena League. He played at Alabama, was drafted to the Colts in 1987. He played all 7 years of his NFL career in Indianapolis for the Colts. So I would certainly say it's an interesting hire, right? Doesn't have any head coaching experience at the college level. Has a coordinator experience in what is technically a professional league, in the Arena League, has played at a very high level at Alabama, and played in the NFL for 7 seasons. That's something that very few individuals can say and put together on a resume. So an interesting hire doesn't mean it's a bad hire. I'm sure he's got a lot of great football knowledge. He's been around the game forever, and I'm excited to see what he does with this program. From what I can tell about this Miles team, 12 players in the portal right now, including 7 starters. That hurts, right? You only got 22 starters. You got to imagine you're losing a chunk of those to graduation, guys who are seniors, redshirt seniors, getting out of their COVID year, that kind of deal. You bring back your top 2 tacklers on defense, which is certainly important. The offensive side of the ball has filled a lot of question marks for me in terms of who's coming back, what does it look like, how are they supplementing that with transfer portal players on the other side of things? Because again, we talked about both these teams losing transfer portal players. Obviously, they're going to supplement that with transfer portal players incoming into their programs. Again, stuff that is pretty hard to track at this point of the year. A lot of that will probably shake out as we get going into the offseason. But general thoughts, again, going back to this matchup, right? And I mentioned it earlier, 2 really strong programs that in 2024 experienced a lot of program firsts. Now, the thing that's interesting about this matchup, and I think the big sticking point about this game, who can make it a program second? Who can build off last year's momentum, and how do they carry that over into week 0? Because I think a big piece of this, we talked a lot about it, there's lots of new pieces, lots of playmakers. Talk about that Virginia Union offense, a lot of question marks for this Miles team, especially when it comes to even the coaching staff, what that looks like. What kind of chemistry will these teams have come week 0? We're talking about a game that could have some real playoff implications at the D2 football level, but these 2 teams could both be very different teams respectively when it comes to playoff football time, when it comes to a SIAC or a CIAA championship. The growth that you typically see, especially from week 0 when you extend the introduction of the season all the way to week 11, week 12 of the year, you see a lot of growth. I think a great example this last season, Ferris State goes down to Pittsburgh State. They lose in the jungle at Kearney Smith. That's the only game that they drop, right? They go on and run the table and win the national championship. And, I think it's very safe to say if Pittsburgh State and Ferris had met in the playoffs, I think Ferris takes it in a landslide. But that's just to show the strides that the Bulldogs made throughout the course of the season. It was still an incredible game in week 0. I think this could have a similar implications. Not to say one of these teams is going to lose and then run the table and win the national championship. That might be a little bit far-fetched. I do think both these teams are serious playoff contenders coming into 2025, but I want to almost curtail expectations because this is a week 0 matchup, and these teams can change so much between week 1 and week 11 when you're talking about conference championship, automatic qualifier implications, right? Because now you win the conference, you get into the dance. That's the new rule in D2 football. So excited about that matchup.